All right, guys. This is the argument with Toddy One Skip, and once again, I have Kathy from Curious Soul Deep Dive. Did I say it right this time?
I don't know. To be honest,
I'll make sure to
Curious
put her
Soul is
link
close
below.
enough. Yep.
Yeah, I'll put her link below. Kathy, welcome again to the argument. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Not a problem. So I was in church Sunday. We do a Sunday service where we stream either the Woodstock Reformed Church of America or Rye Presbyterian Church of New York. And there's a few people that kind of mentioned in the comment and in the chat the end times. And you and I have discussed the Bible, and I know that you have studied the Bible for about 8 years. And
Longer than that.
Okay. You've been
Mhm.
on, you had something, I guess, on YouTube for 8 years, was it? Or you were talking
Excuse me.
about it or something?
Yeah, I started studying in 2014.
Oh, wow. Okay, well, that's
After
good. Go ahead.
after I had a couple of close family members pass away, I wanted to know like what happens after you die and about heaven and all that. So I started studying the Bible in 2014, and I started my first channel. Well, I had a channel since 2011, but I started a separate Bible study channel in 2016, a separate channel
Right.
for that. And so since 2016, and then they started doing YouTube, made it easy for people to do live streams about the fall of 2017. That's when I started doing the nightly Bible studies for 2 hours every night. I used to work 18-hour days where I wouldn't get home till 10 o'clock at night. So we had night owl Bible study. So real
Right.
late. So anyway, a couple hours every night, and that went on for 8 years. So
Okay, well, I said to the people in the chat that I felt like I knew somebody I could talk to about the end times and get some sort of at least understanding. And I want to make it clear that, I feel like the Bible is, well, I feel like the Bible is man's interpretation of God's word, because we know that the Bible was written by many different people that wrote it well after Jesus Christ was on earth, and
yeah, yep,
for anybody to have remembered Jesus Christ being on earth. So everything
right,
is by memory, by storytelling.
yeah,
If we're to believe it, if we're to believe the Bible, in my opinion, but some people believe the Bible as God's word, and I'm not going to argue that. I'm just saying
nope.
that's not what I believe, and that's not where I'm coming from with what I'm saying here, or with where I'm at. I'm not going to speak for Kathy. Kathy, how do you interpret the Bible?
Well, yeah, it's probably about, I don't even know what they say, 50, 60 different authors. I can't remember how many, but there is so mixed mashed that God would not have written a book with so many contradictions and so many mistakes. You know what I mean? If it was a book written by God, it would be perfect without mistakes and contradictions, and that's just chock full of them.
And it all would have been included, because as we know, there were pieces of the Bible
Right.
taken out.
Oh, lots. Yeah. Yep. So, yeah. I think there's some truth to it, but there's some things that aren't true. So, yeah, if God wrote a book, it would be for everybody, by the way, too, not just a small portion of the people.
I agree. I
Um,
agree with that.
yeah.
All right.
So,
So how so I would you say that I think it's fair to say that how somebody interprets the Bible on their own, who's a singular curious soul, right? I think
mhm.
that however they interpret the Bible is very personal, and who's to say that they're right or wrong with their interpretation?
Right.
Correct.
I don't. Yeah, it doesn't matter to me what people think. you
Right,
know what I
right.
mean?
Yeah. So I just want to respect all of that as we continue on with this
Yeah.
conversation. You know what I
Yep.
mean?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, this will be my interpretation. What I've learned from all these years of studying. When I studied for the 8 years that I did this, I from time I woke up in the morning till 2 a.m. I studied it. I studied at work. I studied in the car. I studied, driving loads of, you know, at work, and every waking hour I was fascinated by it, because at first I did believe that God like wrote every word and stuff, but actually the more I got into, the more fascinating it was. So many awesome stories, whether they're true or not. It's good lessons and stuff.
I
But
agree.
yeah.
I agree. So the end times.
Yep.
So I had said to you when I reached out to you, I said, as far as I'm concerned, Kathy, for as long as I've been on this earth, they've been talking about the end times, because when I came on board, so it was only there was the Cuban Missile Crisis, where we were very, very close to be right. I mean, we were closer than,
Well,
because all this
listen.
stuff has come out later, right?
All right. Well, for 2,000 years, and about 2033, which is what's that, 6, 7 years from now?
Yep.
It'll
Yes.
be 2,000 years, and for 2,000 years, people were sure we were right on the edge since the time Jesus, and since these scriptures were written, because Jesus didn't write them all. There's John, there's Paul, wrote these end times. End times called eschatology. It's the study of the end times, and yeah. So for 2,000 years, and in fact, I have multiple times over the years, I've gone on. There's a perfect list you can look at on Wikipedia, and it's just look up failed prophecies, failed end times prophecies, and they'll be all the way from 33 AD to today, and literally hundreds of them. Fun stories about the end times. Everybody always thinks it's the end times, and you can look at that Bible, and you can read those scriptures, and you can apply it at any time. Back then, 2,000 years ago, you could apply it 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 20 years ago, 70 years ago. Probably in the future, they'll always be able to, no matter where you are in life, you could pick that book up and say, oh my goodness, we're on the end of the world. And I thought that too when I started reading, studying eschatology. So, yeah. Anybody can, yeah. Go ahead.
How long did you study eschatology for?
Well, it's all kind of it's in the New Testament. It's part of the New Testament.
Right.
So the whole time, the whole time. But it's a kind of a separate subject, but it kind of,
So, but it was during your time of studying all that period of time since 2014, you said 2011, 2014.
Yeah. In fact, I believed we were at the end for years. I thought it was. In fact, I picked out this house with that in mind, that there might be, the apocalypse. Right. You know what I mean? Right. There might be the end times. So, that's how much I believed it. I believed it so much that, I've changed my life. You know what I mean? And I got ready, and I prepped, and I was a prepper and all that stuff, and thinking it was going to be the end. And if up till then I didn't even think it was the end of the world till I started reading the Bible. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh my goodness, this is now, you know what I mean? And it's just like, it's kind of a mind game, because it's just like if you had a job and your coworker said, hey, I heard the boss talking and they're gonna fire you. You know what I mean? They're mad at you or whatever. I overheard him say they're gonna, and then all of a sudden, when a regular day, everything was great. Then all of a sudden you hear that whispered in your ear, and all of a sudden everybody's looking at you weird. The boss is, it changes your perception and stuff. And all of a sudden you think people are looking at you weird. The boss walked by without saying nothing. When you wouldn't think anything about this before. until somebody plants an idea in your head. And then all of a sudden,
I
wow,
agree.
everything, you know what I'm saying?
Everything looks suspicious. I agree.
Right. And so that's how kind of it is if you start reading this stuff. And,
Well,
but
I think it is
Mhm.
I think that is not just with that. Um I think that people try to do that. I think that I don't know, like I don't know. Anyway, go ahead. I'm
Well,
sorry.
no, that's okay. So, you know, and if you, unless you keep studying and you can be stuck in that mode for your whole life, really. I mean, there's been people who their parents thought it was the end and they still think it's the end. And like the only way to really snap out of it is to keep studying and keep studying and keep studying. And what you got to do is not only just study the Bible, you got to study the New Testament. That's where all that is. You got to study the Old Testament, and most Christians will never do that. And we have to study. Like I've told you before, I've studied. I love studying with rabbis.
Right. You did.
They know their Old Testament. Okay, so I've for many years I have favorites. You know what I mean? I've got favorite rabbis that I watch, and so you got to learn about the Old Testament, what they think, and then you also have to learn about first century history. You know, the history of Jerusalem and the fall of Jerusalem, and you got to learn about the geography, and you got to learn about first century laws. You got to learn all this stuff, and then you'll start to. There'll be questions. I mean, like in the Old Testament. Now, most Christians don't know this because it took me a few years of studying all day, every day before it dawned on me that how come no Christians ever really study the Old Testament end times, and well, not only do they not study the Old Testament, but I started looking into the Old Testament, and that's when it kind of dawned on me, and studying the Old Testament, and what the Christians will say, oh, there's some Old Testament scriptures, one-liners is what it is, out of context, one-liners from the Old Testament that make it look like this has been prophesied even in the Old Testament, which is not. It's always putting a square peg into a round hole. No, it's
wait a minute. I have a question, because I think that people would stop and say, well, wait a minute, doesn't the Old Testament start with Adam and Eve?
Yeah, it does, but that's just the beginning.
God created us, and then it talks about how God created Earth, right? Or our world and the universe, and all of that, and so how can they? Who is not studying? How can you not study that and call yourself a Christian?
Well, first of all, that's only the first book, Genesis. There's 66 books total, and I'd say, I can't remember, is there 26 in the Old Testament? There's a lot in the Old Testament, okay? Right. Most people, Adam and Eve and Noah's Ark, that's about the, furthest people go.
You think they only study like the sensationalized stories?
Yeah, and these, and some people might even think that they know about maybe they'll learn a little bit about Daniel and Ezekiel, which now the Old Testament's got prophets, okay? And I'm going to tell everybody that something that most Christians don't know. Most Christians don't know that the Old Testament is they got end time prophecies too, okay? They had prophets, they had Daniel, Malachi, Ezekiel, they had Elijah, they had all these prophets, but they didn't. Their end times is nowhere near what the New Testament is. A completely different story, and most Christians don't know that. But you have to study those books, and you have to study them really along. There's no shortcuts, right? So you got to spend years, and then you'll realize that so the Jewish people, their end times looks nothing like the Christian version. Okay, it's completely different. And I'll just kind of touch on that. So
Please.
so the Old Testament, what the Jewish people believe is that there were prophets, and these prophets prophesied a lot of things, but they prophesied the it's not even end times, okay? Because Christians, it's the whole world gets destroyed, and but in the Old Testament, they don't really have a end times where the world ends, not at all. They have like there's gonna come an age. That's why they want a third temple, okay? Because the temple has to be in place for their age that's coming, that they've been prophesying about. And what they prophesied about, all these great prophets in the Old Testament were prophesying about the day, someday in the future, when and some of these prophets were writing things when the first temple was destroyed. Okay, so the Babylonians came in. They had a temple in Jerusalem, and Babylonians came in, destroyed everything, hauled off Daniel and the rest of them. Daniel in the lion's den, that story. But they hauled off these people, and Daniel and they prophesied. They're dreaming about the day that they can go home and build another temple, which they did. And eventually Solomon built the temple. But anyway, so the Old Testament is prophesying about someday when, now I think most people know that their temple was destroyed, right? In Jerusalem, right. In 70 AD, they had their temple destroyed. The only thing left is one wall, and that's the Wailing Wall that they go pray at. That's the only thing left out of the second temple. So they're and they think their time is coming too. But their prophecy says that there'll be a temple where the son of David, like an ancestor of David through King Solomon, down that bloodline, he's going to someday, this prophet is going to come. And not a prophet, it's more of a, they don't use the word Messiah. Messiah definitely, actually, the word Messiah, Mashiach or whatever, it just means anointed. It's anointed person. And so every king is anointed, right? And so it's basically the anointed one. Someday, this man, and he's going to be wealthy. It's really everything opposite of Jesus. Okay, so he's going to be wealthy. He's going to come. He's going to be a descendant of King David through Solomon. He's going to come, and he's a rich man, and he's got a wife, and he's got children, and he's going to sit on the throne of David someday. Okay, so, and then he's going to rule with a rod of iron. He's going to rule not just Jerusalem and Israel. He's going to rule the whole world. Okay, this is what they think. So, according to their prophets. So, and by the way, this is going to be a rich man, and he's going to be buried in a poor man's grave. And again, that's opposite of Jesus. Jesus was a poor man, and he got buried in a rich man's grave. Jesus didn't have a wife. He didn't have kids. So everything about the Old Testament Messiah, they don't really call it Messiah. The king, the future king, is opposite of Jesus. kind of coincidentally, but anyway, so this man, he's going to sit on this.
Do you think it's coincidence?
That everything's opposite.
Yeah. Do you think that, or do you know how long?
No,
I don't know this. Do you know how long the Old Testament was written before the New Testament was written? Okay.
Yeah. So some of these prophets lived like 500 years before Jesus was born, and the thing is, Daniel, Malachi, and Ezekiel, these three prophets in the Old Testament, which is even probably longer than that, they all said that their prophecies is the end of prophecies written. They say all three of them. Now there's more than one prophet, more than three prophets in the Old Testament, but Daniel, Malachi, and Ezekiel said this is the end of the prophecies. There isn't going to be any more until the time, the age, I'm in this age that comes where they're going to basically rule the world. Okay. And so, if you read that, that, you'd say, wait a minute, then how come the New Testament got written and how come all these new prophecies came? What happened to the old ones?
Right.
So they're saying, these prophets in the Old Testament are saying, this is it, buddy. There's no more after this. You know what I mean? And then 500 years later, we got Jesus, more than 500. And then you got, these new prophecies at the end of the world that don't match up with theirs. So, yeah, if you realize, and if you learn and study the Old Testament, you'll realize that they are waiting for something completely different than the Christians, okay? But most Christians don't know this because they don't read the Old Testament, don't study it. But this man is going to sit on the throne, and he's going to rule the whole world with a rod of iron. And this man, this king, okay, descendant of David, he's going to be a king. And that's why they need a third temple. Okay, he's got to have somewhere to sit, right? He can't come until there's a temple built. So their prophecy
That
can't
makes
come.
Okay. Uh-huh.
So that's why they're wanting this third temple. But it's anyway. I won't get too deep into that. But anyway, so as a matter of fact, there is in Isaiah chapter 2, there's a prophecy about the end times when this king is going to rule the world, okay? And he's going to rule over all the world affairs, okay? And the whole world will be at peace. There'll be no war, no more conflicts. And if there's anything comes up, you got to go through this king in Israel, okay? Now, if you're non-Jewish, I wouldn't even get into that, okay? But it's them ruling the world over the rest, okay?
Okay.
The Jewish people are going to rule the world, and there is particularly this king. And so, actually, if you go to the United Nations in New York City, the world headquarters for United Nations, there's a statue outside of it. Excuse me. And it's actually from Isaiah.
That was a sneeze, God bless you.
Thank you. It was actually outside the headquarters in the United Nations in New York City. I don't know if you're probably familiar with that, but there's a statue there, and it is about Isaiah chapter 2, about the prophecy where there will be world peace someday, and they'll be turning their weapons into plowshares, okay? So all the weapons will be destroyed and turned into farming equipment. And so if you go to the United Nations, you'll see this big statue with that on there outside the United Nations that's prophesying a day with world peace, with totally disarmored. There's not a weapon left on earth, and they're ruling the place. And as a matter of fact, and before that happens, they're going to have Elijah. Elijah's supposed to come back, right? He's Elijah from the Old Testament. He's supposed to come back first. He's like the forerunner, right? And so every Passover, when the Jewish people have their Seder and their meal or whatever, they sit down, they pour their kosher wine, and everybody has a glass of wine. They pour extra glass of wine for Elijah. And they have the front door open, okay? Now, this is always in April or March, depending on the moon cycles. But so when their Passover comes each spring, they have their meal, they have the front door open. And they're looking kind of for Elijah, okay? So they have this extra glass of wine at the table, and then they'll tell the children, go see if Elijah's here, and they'll go out and they'll look out the door. Nope, Elijah's not here. And at a certain time during Passover, they'll shut the door. Then they don't open it until the next day. It's kind of a thing. I've actually practiced the Passover and the Passover routine and all that rituals and stuff. But so each year they're looking for Elijah, and Elijah will come first before their I hate using the word Messiah because they don't call it Messiah, but before their king comes, you know what I mean? And so, and then if he doesn't come, then they kind of wait to the next year because I think if I remember right, I think they think it's going to come around Passover. Okay, so that's their end times. And there's all kinds of, and another thing, during them end times, right now, the Jewish people have been scattered over the world, right?
Right.
At different times. They were exiled in Babylon with Daniel, and then they, later in the fall of Jerusalem, they were all exiled again, you know, a bunch of them.
Right.
And they're only allowed to come back once a year during Passover. But otherwise, they're scattered. They're scattered all over the world. And so this prophecy, that Old Testament prophecy, prophesizes them all coming back, you know, to Jerusalem, all coming back to Israel from all over. They're returning from everywhere, every country, the four corners of the earth, they say. So they're all coming back, and they're all going to come back to Jerusalem, you know, when their king comes, you know, and when their king rules the world. And so, and there's a famous, you know, Ezekiel's got the dry bones story and all that. Ezekiel's got some good prophecies, but Ezekiel's got a story where they had they showed a stick in each hand, a stick in the right hand, stick in the left hand, and it symbolizes the tribes that were split up, because after King Solomon left, after he died, everything went to shit right away, and the taxes went sky high, everything, and the 12 tribes split into two groups. 10 of them went north, 2 of them went south. So we got, you know, there now we got the southern ones is Judah and Benjamin. So their prophecy is that they're all going to come together. The ones, you know, the 10 from the north and the 2 from the south are all going to join, plus all the ones from around the world. So everybody's going to be reunited. Right. So they'll take the 2 sticks and they'll put them both into one hand, and that symbolizes the tribes all reuniting. So there's all kinds of prophecies about this, that, you know, that's what they're looking for. Everybody's going to be united, and they're going to run the world and all this stuff. So, you know, and so that's their end times, I guess, if you want to call it. But it's not like the end of the world. That's just
I got it.
You know what I mean? So that's them. All right, and then you have, you know, like I said, about 500 years before Jesus, you know, was born. The Malachi, I think, was the last written book. So there's been nothing written since. Okay, they're done writing now. They're just waiting for everything. But then you have about 50 years before Jesus was born. That was around, you know, 3 BC to 5 BC. So we just might as well say like when BC turned into AD, right? Okay. That's about the time Jesus was born. So about 50 years before Jesus was born, the Romans took over Jerusalem. They ruled it. They were the authority. And they just kind of bullied their way in, and they just took over. And so there was, you know, Jesus, from the time he was born, Jerusalem was ruled by the Romans, right? And they were oppressed. They, you know, just think about it. There's other people in your country ruling you, right? Their laws, their everything. And so when Jesus was born, he was born into this. And so during his life, they all dreamed, him and his family, everybody, all the Jews dreamed about the day where they ain't going to have to be under these people's thumb. You know what I mean? And so about 66 AD. Now I'm going to get into the destruction of the temple because it's really, really important. What happened in 70 AD is really what these end time prophecies are describing. And it's important to know about the fall of Jerusalem, because then when you read these end time prophecies, you're gonna know what I'm talking about, and you're gonna understand that this was not. They're not writing about, okay, so The New Testament is not writing about a land far, far away in 2,000 years from now. They're writing about what's happening at the time that they're writing it, because these books, the Gospels and the books from Paul and the book of Revelation, well, let's just say Jesus, the Gospels, when Jesus was writings about Jesus, and then all letters from Paul. This was all written right around the fall of Jerusalem in the 60s, 60 AD, during the 60s. And it was either right before the fall or right after the fall. Okay, so, and I mean, if you believe the dates, right, then it'll make sense, because I told you we're going to look at Matthew 24, and that's the one that the Christians read and think, oh my gosh, it's the end of the world. And but I'm going to show you that I'll tell you what happened in 70 AD, and then when you read Matthew 24 and these other book of Revelation and whatnot, you're going to understand that they're talking about the fall of Jerusalem to a T. And so, but if you don't study that, and almost no Christian does, they don't study that history. They don't study the Old Testament. They don't study the fall of Jerusalem. They don't study first century history over there. Nothing, you know what I mean? So they got no references to any of this. So you can just hand them that Matthew 24 and they think, oh my gosh, because they got nothing to connect it to, right? And so, okay, so I'll tell you what happened in 70 AD when the fall of Jerusalem, because this is when they're writing these books and they're describing what's happening. And so all the people who've gotten them ever since who don't know about this can't make the connection. So so let's just go to 66 AD, 3.5 years before the temple was destroyed in Jerusalem, the Jewish temple. The Jewish people revolted about the taxes, because the Romans were taxing the heck out of everybody. I mean, taking their money, going door to door. It was tax, you know what I mean? And they were taxing the temple. I mean, that was making big bucks. It was, everybody's getting rich, but they were taxing everybody, and the Jewish people had enough about 66 AD. And so they revolted, and they went against the Roman government about the taxes. So there was like a 3.5 year war, right? Which brings you to the spring of 70 AD. Now in 70
Isn't
AD,
it funny? Can I just say, isn't it funny that everything has to do with money and taxes and stuff? Doesn't that?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Is that not the root of all evil? I mean, I'm just telling you.
Well, people think money is the root of all evil, but actually the Bible verse.
But money and taxes, my friend.
No, but I'm saying people misquote it. It's actually supposed to be, for the love of money is the root of all evil, not the money itself. It says, people, yeah, look it up. People always say money is the root of all evil. No, it's not the money. It's for the love of money is the root of all evil.
Greed of it. It's the greed.
Yes, absolutely. It's the greed. Exactly. Okay, so yeah, and as I'm saying this about the tax, I'm thinking to myself, the suckers are still doing it right now. But anyway,
and you and I have said this, and I think you and I definitely have had this conversation before, where I don't mean any blasphemy by it at all, but I do think honestly that this was the first book on politics. This was the first book, and it's divisive. It is.
Okay. Actually, I'm going to back up, because you just reminded me of something. So when Jesus went to his death in 33 AD, this is 40 years before the destruction. What did the last thing that Jesus did in his last day? He destroyed the temple. He went in, not destroyed the temple. He went in and Jesus was very angry with this temple. Basically, the church is money hungry, okay? It's all about the money, okay? Jesus didn't like this. He said, you've turned my father's house, which is the temple, into a den of thieves, okay? You're a den of shredders, a den of thieves, they call it. basically, you're wolves shredding a little rabbit up. You know what I mean? That's basically how he described it. You've turned my father's house into a den of thieves because it was all money grubbing. And
Right.
the Jewish leaders were in on it, right? Because they're making buco bucks. I mean, like, kind of like how the Roman Catholic Church has got all this money, right? They know how to make money, and it was the same with the
Well,
temple.
if you
They
go to any church, and let me, and I know that
Mhm.
this conversation, if you go to look at the Church of Scientology,
Oh,
look at
yeah.
look at Hillsong, and I'm not saying anything. I mean, but I'm just saying
No.
that if you look at
Right.
Joel Osteen, look at
Right.
and these
hmm
I mean, look at the ones that have gotten in trouble in the past. You know what I mean? So I
Right.
mean, all the
So,
churches they just have so much money and they're tax free.
yeah, right. Yeah, it even makes it even worse. But so Jesus went to his death. He was crucified. Uh, he went before Pontius Pilate for basically insurrection against the government because Jesus first went in there. He knew this was going to cost him his life. That's your the triumphal entry into Jerusalem. He came in riding on a donkey or whatever. He knew this week it was gonna cost him his life. So he goes in there and that's what the Last Supper. Okay, so the Last Supper is because he knows he just tore up the temple. Okay, he went in there and he knocked over the money changers. Okay, these are the people had tables set up, and they're so people different countries they would exchange the money right from this country, so they're money changers. And then they had the tables, and then they had all these animals in cages that they were selling at very high prices for people to sacrifice. Right, so it was just a horrible business. I mean, they turned it into basically just a money grubbing business. So Jesus went in there and he knew this would cost him his life because you're going against the government when you did this. And so he went in there and he knocked over the money changers' tables, knocked the money over. He opened the cages and let the animals out. And he's kicking the cages over and he tried to get the animals going. And they're like, "What are you doing?" And he said, "You've turned my father's house into a den of thieves. You're just a bunch of money grubbers." You know what I mean?
Right.
Okay, then he takes off, right? And he knows he's they're going to get him and they're going to put him to death for this, right? So he goes and and this is during the week of Passover. And so he goes and he has his Last Supper with the guys. Now, they don't really, it's kind of going over their head, but he's there and so they have this Last Supper. Now people think it's Passover, but it absolutely wasn't. It was a couple days before the Passover. It was like on a Wednesday instead of the Friday. But anyway, so he has this Last Supper and he tells people, this is it, And then that night they go out. This is how you know it's not Passover because first of all they opened the door and went out. But and he gave Judas at the Last Supper. He said, "One of you are going to turn me in about this. You know what I mean? One of you is going to give me up. You know what I mean?" Right. And then it was Judas Priest.
Right.
I'm sorry, Judas Iscariot. But Judas Iscariot was the one that was going to turn him in.
That's allegedly Judas Priest, okay?
Yeah, I don't know why I said Judas Priest.
Because I can see it goes hand in hand when you're saying Judas. In
right.
day and age, you know what I mean? But I hear you.
Yeah. But so Judas Iscariot, he hands the money to him. Jesus hands the money and said, "Go do what you got to do." So he goes, "Okay." And the rest of the guys didn't know what was going on. Judas takes off. He goes straight to the temple and he tattles on it. It's Jesus. He's over there. Here's where to find him. He went and turned him in, and Judas was paid 30 pieces of silver for that. Right. That's the price of handing somebody over. It's basically the price of a slave, But anyway, It's a price for a human. So they give him the 30 pieces of the reward and says, "Hey, he's going to be over in the Garden of Gethsemane," right? So after dinner, they get up and they go to the Garden of Gethsemane but this is his favorite place, and he goes and he prays, and that's where he sweats drops of blood and all that. That's in the Garden of Gethsemane, and that's supposedly the place that he's supposed to return, right? Anyway, then Judas goes and tattles on him. Then they go and find him in the Garden of Gethsemane, right where he said he was, and they go up there, and since they all looked alike, they told the Roman guards, said, go give the guy a kiss, which one it is. So that's when Judas goes up, and he gives Jesus the kiss, right? That's where that comes from. Okay, so then they arrest him, and he goes, and he ends up going,
known as the kiss of death.
Yeah, that's Judas. Yeah. He gives him the kiss, and that identifies who it is. And anyway, so they go and they have a trial and all this stuff, and they put him to death, right? Well, anyway, so that's what the state of the temple was. And okay, it was just at this point it was just a money grab and all this stuff. And so it's kind of one of the reasons, big reason why he went to his death is because of this. So anyway, fast forward. So now he knew when Jesus says Matthew 24, and you can bring that up when you want. But
Okay.
You don't have to bring it up yet. But time goes on. A couple decades later, in 66 AD, the Jewish people had enough about. They were just getting squeezed on the taxes, so they have this revolt. They have this 3.5-year war, and Jesus prophesied, which wasn't hard to do, that the temple would be destroyed. They knew it was coming. They all knew it was coming, just like the first temple was destroyed. So in 70 AD, they're fighting. It's been a 3.5 war, and Titus, who runs the Roman army and stuff, Titus has this evil, diabolical plan. And the diabolical, evil plan is he's going to tear down Jerusalem. He's going to tear that temple down. But he wants to make sure all the Jewish people are in there as possible. So evil Titus waits till Passover, right? The spring of 70 AD. And this is important because this is what these prophets were writing about, like in the New Testament. And that's why, this is why when we get to Matthew 24, I'm going to tell you. So what happened is Titus waits until Passover, because at Passover, instead of just having a few thousand people in Jerusalem, and remember, Jerusalem, all these cities had big, tall walls around them. All these cities had giant walls around them, to protect from people
from
coming in.
Invasion, right.
Yeah. So, so in 70 AD, he waits till Passover, because that's when thousands of people migrate into Jerusalem, right, for Passover. Okay, so now the Jewish people only have so much food. You know what I mean?
This is the pilgrimage that you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
The pilgrimage. Okay, very good. Well,
Yeah,
I want people to be able, because listen, I haven't read the whole Bible, but I know that people, they've heard of people pilgrimage.
Yeah.
And this is exactly what you're talking about. Okay, go ahead.
Yes, because they were exiled, and so once a year they're allowed to come in to the city, right? And Passover lasts for the whole week, you know what I mean? And so for that week, what the people do is they stock up on a little extra food, because all thousands of people are coming in to this gated, locked-in city. So they get all the people. Titus waits till all the Jewish people are gathered, and thousands of people come into Jerusalem, and he waits, and then he attacks, right? And so they're all locked in this gated city. There's 3 sections of it, and so now they're all trapped in there, right? And so very quickly after the week is up, they're running out of food, right? And so the Romans, Titus has Romans attacking, trying to bust through the gates, right? And and anyway, so this went on from April. It went on 5 months, all the way till almost September 1st. I think about September 1st. They were fighting. They broke into the first section of, the city of David, the old section. They broke in there and wiped out those people and set up camp. And then they broke. After a month or so, they broke into the second section. And anyway, they were just taking over. And in the meantime, these people have no food. And so they're starving. They all starved to death. And they were dying of diseases and pestilences. And all these people are trapped in here. And so they really quickly ran out of food. That was this evil, diabolical plan. So there was massive starvation. There was diseases. It was awful. And
it's almost like history repeats itself because I mean, the most recent thing like that in my mind, as far as the Jews go, was the Holocaust, where they were all locked in and they starved.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So history repeats itself for sure sometimes. Well, most of the time, I mean, that's all it can do, I guess, as time moves on, right? We see things over and over again. But go ahead, Kathy. Thank you for this. Go ahead.
Yeah. So then eventually they wipe them all out. Okay. Now, if you ever want to watch some good documentaries, there's a channel called Evictus, I think it's called. It's been a while since I've been. He's got some documentaries
with an I, right?
I think so. I can't remember if Invictus. Anyway, just type in 70 AD fall of Jerusalem. He's got some good documentaries on that.
Okay.
And then really what's really cool, check into Masada because, and that's important too, because so when these people are being attacked by the Romans, thousands of people locked in this gated city, the only way out is through the back that wasn't guarded because it's the big wall, then it goes way down real low into the Kidron Valley, and then it goes way back up, and then it goes to the Garden of Gethsemane where Jesus was. So there's kind of a buffer there because the Romans would get into these cities, they would just build a rampart, and they would just, they have legions, they got thousands of soldiers that build these ramps, and they just climb back up, and but they couldn't get out that back side, so people were trying to escape out the back, and then people were trying to get food to bring back in, and right. People were getting caught sneaking out the back at night, and it was terrible. But anyway, but some of them fled to the wilderness, okay? And they went to this place called Masada. That's really a fascinating story, too. So they go to Herod's, it used to be Herod's hideout. It's this big, like, self-contained living place up on top of this, like, cylinder mountain that you can't get up. I don't even know how to get up there. But anyway, so a bunch of them fled to the wilderness, and they ended up at Masada. You should study that. That's a fascinating story. And then the Romans found them after the Jerusalem fell. The Romans found them, and it took them 6 months to build this rampart to get up this mountain. And so the people up on top had to watch them, day after day building this thing. And eventually they got to the top and wiped them out. But anyway, so those are people that fled to the wilderness. And anyway, and this is important because it's going to be Matthew 24. The stuff I'm telling you right now that happened in 70 AD, you're going to see it when we go to Matthew 24. All right. So anyway, eventually they busted into the third part.
So let me ask you this, Kathy. When we go to Matthew 24, what time period would that be?
That was written about 60 AD, between 60 and 70.
So, but what it does is what you're saying is this is telling the future of what's happening. But
well, a lot of people think it was written after, it's not really a prophecy.
Because when I read a book, and I know that the Bible, you shouldn't read like that because it's not chronological. So it's hard to
these books were probably not even written. They're written either right before the fall or right after. And so it's either a prophecy or they're talking about something that's about to happen or just did happen.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So, but it's nonetheless, they were all written right at this time that the temple was destroyed and everything. And
Okay.
it's important because we're going to show you on Matthew 24. So anyway, they so most of them started and stuff, and when they finally busted through to the third part of the city, that's where the temple was, all right, and everything in there. Solomon made this grand temple, and everything was covered with gold, right? The pillars, everything was covered with gold, and they had the sacrificial altar there and stuff. And anyway, so the Romans finally broke through that, and that's when they pillaged the place. They robbed everything. They got all the gold. And there's actually, they used to have parades in Rome about I don't know if it was for Titus. I think it was Titus's son, something. But they used to have these parades that reenacted the taking over of the temple and what they did. But anyway, so once they get into the temple part, this is God's holy thing. Only the priests were allowed inside. And anyway, when they bust through that third part and get in the temple, they're just destroying everything. And then what they did is they brought in a pig. And I can't remember if it was a donkey, but I remember for sure one of them was a pig, which is an abomination to the Jewish people to have a pig and slap that on the altar, right? But they did. They put a pig on the altar and sacrificed it to Zeus or whoever their god was. But they were putting these things that are just disgusting to the Jewish people, like the pig on the altar, and slaughtered it and sacrificed it to their god, right? So this is so offensive, right? Like the worst thing you could do is bring a pig and then sacrifice it to some other god, in their temple. Anyway, they ended up hauling away everything and burning down the rest. All right, so that was that. Anyway, so fast forward now, people are writing these books and everything, and oddly enough, Jesus was probably the only one of the disciples that knew how to read and write. And oddly enough, he didn't write down nothing. These are all written later, decades later, many years later, when none of the real disciples are probably still alive. So who knows who's writing these books. But anyway, now fast forward to the writings in the New Testament, right?
Right.
So let me turn on my computer so I can see what you're doing here. So you're going to go to Matthew 24. That's one of the end time prophecies. And I'll tell you about the book of Revelation too. There's different prophecies in the New Testament. Some of them are in the Gospels. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John is first four books of the New Testament is supposedly the writings of Jesus' disciples and quotes from Jesus and all this. So so there's prophecy in that. So there's prophecies in Matthew, there's prophecies in Paul's letters, and there's prophecy. I'm talking end time prophecy. End time prophecy, and Jesus. What people? Let me back up. What people interpret as end time prophecies, okay, in the Gospels, in Matthew in particular, and then there's end time prophecies, I guess, for Paul, if you could take it that way. And then there's the book of Revelation, and I'll get into that because that's a whole nother can of worms. Anyway, but first of all, you've got most of the Christians, they'll look at Matthew 24. That's the biggie. There's other ones in the Gospels, but let's go to Matthew 24 and we'll read it. Now that's what people, let me see if I can pull it up on a second. I got my computer on.
Okay. Do you see where I see it over here?
Yeah, it's too small on my phone. Oh, yeah.
But no. But I was just wondering if you see it move and stuff when I'm doing.
Yeah. Okay. So, but I want to read it on my computer. Give me a second.
I just want to move it, and I'm here to.
Well, actually, I could probably blow it up and read it on here. Okay, so Matthew 24, the destruction of the temple and the sign of the end times. Now remember, Jesus taught the Old Testament. He taught the prophets. He taught the law, okay? So there's no way, in my opinion, that Jesus would be writing anything about this because his beliefs are in Daniel, Malachi, Ezekiel, the prophets of the Old Testament, right? He taught it. That's what he taught in the temple. And at the Mount of Olives, anyway, was across the
But the
Kidron
Old
Valley.
Testament, but wasn't the Old Testament before Jesus arrived?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
Okay.
way before Jesus grew up with the Old Testament.
Right. Right.
You
Right.
know, with
Okay.
the laws of Moses, with the prophecies from Daniel, Malachi, Ezekiel, Elijah, all the prophets that prophesy their king. Okay. So
Okay.
there's no way Jesus would be committing blasphemy if he actually said this stuff. All right, a lot of this stuff. So I just
Well,
don't
let
see
me
it.
ask you this because I'm
Mhm.
ignorant, and this is going to show ignorance, but I guarantee you a lot of people won't know it either. So,
Mhm.
was the Old Testament wasn't available for anybody to read, or was it? Was
No,
that what
nope,
it wasn't, right? Because the first time the
nope.
Bible came out, it came out as well. I mean, the first book ever published was the Bible, which was the Old and New Testament together. Am I correct? Right? I'm
I
not
don't know
saying
about.
people couldn't. I'm not saying people couldn't have scriptures, but to have
No,
the actual Old Testament as a book form, that didn't happen.
no, no.
And
Actually, so during Jesus' time, they had scrolls. Okay, a
right, right,
scroll.
right.
Okay, and the
But they wouldn't have
scrolls.
mass produced them, right?
No,
Right,
no.
right.
Nope. And so when Jesus was alive, now back then, pen and paper were for the rich. Okay, you
Yes.
you had to have a lot of money if you had pen and paper, and you had to probably have a lot of money to be educated enough to read and write. Now, some people knew how to read, but most people didn't know how to write. That's two completely different things. Reading and writing, completely different, because nobody had ink and paper. If you did, it was very, very expensive. And so nobody could afford
And
to.
it was ink. It was ink and a stick, basically. And it was
Yeah,
ink and
yeah,
a
and
needle, or you know what I mean?
yeah, it
And the
was
whole thing was
yeah,
something expensive. You're right. It was a luxury item.
very expensive. So most people didn't know how to read or write or have paper and pen. It just, but Jesus was educated. He did know how to read and write. Probably one. They even made a point to say that this is how you know the disciples didn't write nothing, because he made a point more than once to say that the disciples were very illiterate. They were uneducated. Nobody knew how to read and write. Possibly Matthew might have known how to count because he's a tax collector, but it didn't mean he even know how. But they made a point to say none of them know how to read or write.
Wow.
They're uneducated men from Galilee. You know what I mean?
Right, right.
They actually kind of mocked. Somebody mocked them. How these guys uneducated people? And they said we don't know how to read or write, but most people didn't. So if you wanted to read one of the scrolls from the Old Testament, you had to go into the temple, and you would read it there. It's like a library. You know what I memean?
Right.
And that's why Jesus had to go to the temple to teach and to read and study. So everybody went. It's like a library. You just use it and then you leave. Nobody had this stuff in their house unless you're like very wealthy.
Right.
So, yeah. So these were scrolls that he was reading and stuff. So no. Anyway, yeah. So when the Gospels were written, during the 60s and probably 70s, along with especially Paul's letters later. Then the book of Revelation wasn't even written until the turn of the first century into the second century. So some of this was written after the destruction of the temple. All right. And so that's not prophecy. You know what I mean? So anyway, all right. So I'm going to just read it off of my phone here.
Okay.
All right. So Matthew 24 is the big one that people like to read. There's a lot of them. You can just type in end time prophecies in Google and, end time Bible verses, and it will pull up. But click on Bible Gateway, and it will pull up just like she's got right here. So, all right. So let's read Matthew 24, 1 through 44. This is one of the biggies that people think. Now, just think about this. And back then, when this was written, and in the first century, they wrote it was no punctuation. There's no chapters, no verses, no titles, just one continuous thing. They didn't have
So let's just
periods
say
or
that too, we've gone back to doing.
yeah, right. So picture this is a scroll, and it's continuous. No stops, no periods, no headings. This didn't even come up till just a couple hundred years ago. That anyway, they just started doing this, and it actually is kind of confusing because you don't know where one story stops and the other one starts because they don't. Anyway, so just picture Matthew 24 is one long thing with no breaks, okay? And what is it about? It's about the destruction of the temple and signs of the end times. And again, back then, Jesus would have believed in the Jewish version of the end times where there's a temple and the King of David stuff, you know what I mean?
Right.
Jesus wouldn't even have believed in the destruction of earth. And anyway, so let's read it, 24. Jesus left the temple and was walking away when his disciples came up to him to call his attention to his buildings. Do you see all these things? He asked. And Jesus said, truly I tell you, not one stone here will be left upon another. Everyone will be thrown down. Now that's what happened to the temple. Temple was made out of stones. The Romans came and destroyed everything. All right, you got to go back down. I can't read that fast.
Oh no,
wait.
you're there as Jesus.
Oh, okay. Okay, maybe I had it wrong. Okay, so that did happen. All right. Now, technically, there wasn't not one stone left upon another because you got the whole Western Wall still standing there, what they pray at. You know what I mean?
Right.
But so there was
Wailing Wall.
Yeah, the Wailing Wall.
Right.
So that's the wall. That's the only wall that's left of the Second Temple, the one that was destroyed by the Romans. That's the wall, and so. Technically, that wasn't really true. There was some stones left. Now that I've told you what happened in 70 A.D., you're going to see this is the story. As Jesus was sitting on the Mount of Olives, they said, the disciples came to him privately. Tell us, they said, when will this happen? And what will be the sign of your coming and the end of the age? Jesus answered, watch out that no one deceives you. For many will come in my name, claiming I am the Messiah, and will deceive many. You'll hear of wars and rumors of wars, and that's what happened, right?
Yep.
For the temple, all right. And you could really go any time in history. There's always wars and rumors of wars.
Or rumors of it for sure.
Right. This has been going on forever, but at this time, okay, they're hearing rumors that we're going to be destroyed, and they're going to come for us. And anyway, so they knew this was coming. So you hear wars and rumors of wars, but see to it that you're not alarmed. Such things must happen, but the end is still to come. Nation will rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom, and this has been going down thousands of years before he even wrote this. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So this is always happening. There will be famines and earthquakes in various places. All these things are the beginning of birth pains. Then you'll be handed over and persecuted and be put to death, which they were, and you will be hated by all nations because of me. At that time, many will turn away from the faith and will betray and hate each other, and many false prophets will appear and deceive many people. Because of the increase of wickedness, the love of most will grow cold, but the one who stands firm to the end will be saved. And this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in the whole world as a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come. Now that's important because later on, Paul writes these letters that say Jesus will return before they end up, because at the beginning Christianity, the Christians were sent out to spread the gospel to the whole world, right? Four corners.
Right. Yep.
And Jesus said, don't worry, by the time you guys before you even finish, I'm going to come back. Before you guys even finish spreading this word, I'll be back. So, Jesus is talking about returning during his lifetime. Anyway, So when you see, here you go. So when you see standing in the holy place, which was the temple, the abomination that makes desolation, okay, that's when they destroyed the temple, spoken through the prophet Daniel. Bam. All right. Daniel
Right.
said, all right, not the prophet, he standing next to him, these people that came later. No, he's talking about Daniel. Daniel never said nothing about the apocalypse and all this. He's spoken through the prophet Daniel. Let the reader understand that those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Okay, that's them. That's the southern kingdom. That's what I'm telling you. The tribe of Judah and the tribe of Benjamin.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Okay. So the southern. So when this happens, when the Romans come, basically, when the Romans come, get the hell out of there. Okay, because once you get locked in, you're screwed.
Right.
All right. So he says, let the reader understand that those that are in Judea flee to the mountains. And that's what they did. They went to Herod's hideout. They went out to all kinds of places, but the ones that were trapped, that's a cool story. Anyway, let no one on the housetop go down and take anything out of the house. And the reason they say that is because people hung out on the roofs. All right.
Right.
And then, so if you're hanging out on your rooftop, and you see the Romans coming, just get the hell out. Don't grab nothing. Just run. Don't go in your house and try to pack a bag. Run, okay? Because your time, once you see them,
Right.
you got to get out. Anyway, let no one on the housetop go down and take anything out of the house. Let no one in the field go back to get their cloak, okay? Just run. How dreadful it will be in those days for pregnant women and nursing mothers. Pray that your flight, here you go, pray that your flight will not take place in winter or on the Sabbath. Because who wants to run for their life in winter, right? And
Right.
if it's on the Sabbath, the gates are going to be closed. It's just going to be a lot harder on the Sabbath, right?
Right.
And anyway. So they knew this was coming. For then there will be great distress, unequaled from the beginning of the world till now. Listen, they've never seen. The temple got destroyed, the first one, the Babylonians and all that. But it wasn't like this, where you had
they've
thousands
never
of
seen
people.
destruction. Yeah.
Yeah, and all these people from all over that came a pilgrimage there, and they're trapped in here. Anyway, so there'll be great distress, unequaled from the beginning of the world till now, and never to be equaled again. If those days had not been cut short, no one would survive. But for the sake of the elect, those days will be shortened. At that time, if anyone says to you, look, here's the Messiah, or there he is, don't believe it. For false messiahs and false prophets will appear and perform great signs and wonders to deceive, if possible, even the elect. See, I told you ahead of time. Now, just think about it. How many people, how many prophets have come and told you it's the end of the world and all this? Anyway,
Right.
so, okay. So if anyone tells you, there he is out in the wilderness, don't go out. Here, he's in the inner rooms. Don't believe it. For as lightning comes from the east, well, the original says from the east to the west. It says, for lightning that comes from the east is visible even from the west, so will the coming of the Son of Man. Wherever there's a carcass, there the vultures will gather. That's when you got massive death, and there's vultures and everything.
Right.
Which is what happened. They all most of them starved to death and died of diseases and stuff. Or they were, killed by the sword.
Right.
Immediately after the stress of those days, the sun will be darkened and the moon will not give its light. That's an eclipse. And the stars will fall from the sky and the heavy bodies will be shaken. Then will appear the Son of Man in heaven. And when they say Son of Man, you guys, people think it's automatically Jesus, okay? Listen, the whole Old Testament is filled with the Son of Man talking of Adam. Okay, Adam was the original man, and so they used to call humans the Son of Man, right? Because you're the son of Adam.
Right.
And the prophet Ezekiel was called the Son of Man almost 100 times. So they've referred to Ezekiel as the Son of Man. A lot of people are Son of Man. It just means a human. All right, then will appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. And then all the peoples on the earth will mourn when they see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he will send his angels with a loud trumpet call. And they will gather the elect from the four winds and from one end of the heavens to the other. Now learn this lesson from the fig tree. As soon as the twigs get tender and its leaves come out, you know that the summer is near. Even so, now this would be spring, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's when it happened.
Winter, spring, summer. Yeah, because spring and then summer. Yep.
Spring is when summer's near and you're just getting buds on the trees, right?
Right.
This is spring. This is Passover. Now learn this lesson from the fig tree. As soon as the twigs get tender and its leaves come out, you know that summer's near. Even so, when you see these things, you'll know that it's near, right at the door. Truly, I tell you, this generation, here you go, bam. Truly, here you go. Truly, I tell you, this generation will not pass away until all these things have happened. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will never pass away. So right there, it tells you in many, many times over and over, it says all these things are going to be happening in our lifetime. And that's why in 2 Peter, which is, long after, all scholars will agree, 2 Peter was written, way past it, probably into the 2nd century. And it's in there because there's people in 2 Peter saying, hey, wait a minute, when's this going to happen? Because, when's the return of Jesus going to come? Because we've been waiting since our great grandfathers died waiting for this. You know what I mean? It's been, well, how come this didn't happen? Anyway, they're called out on it. Of course, they're scolded for questioning things.
And what you said is, when you just brought that up about it almost being like current day, it's not.
Mm-hmm.
This was written this was written hundreds of years ago. The Bible was written hundreds of years ago. So
thousands. So they're already
okay. So wait. When was the Bible written?
Well, if you're talking about
the Bible that we can put in our hands today.
Well, the Old Testament was written, over 500 years up to 1,500 years right before Jesus. That's the Old Testament. That was written in scrolls for 1,000, long time.
Right, but I'm talking about the mass-produced Bible that we are able to get our hands on today. The first version of that, it's only got to be hundreds of years old. Do you think that's actually thousands? I don't think it's thousands. It's hundreds.
No, the original was written. All right. And then actually there's not a single copy of original New Testament. The closest thing they have is a little scrap it was about the size of a postcard that was the second or third copy, a copy of a copy of a copy. And I think it was the 2nd or 3rd century or something like that. So it was hundreds of years old. They don't have nothing near the original. And like you'll see it, you look it up. They're little scraps without 10 words on it. all deteriorated and about the size of a postcard. They got a couple of those. That's it. The rest is they had to kind of fill in the blanks. Anyway, the original. This is supposed to be written in the 1st century, but it really wasn't printed up for everybody. Till I don't know, 100 years, whenever they had the modern printing press, you know what I mean? Where they could mass produce it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So that's what I was talking about, because if everybody has a book, right, then as we know the saying, knowledge is power, right? So but like you said, a lot of people didn't have the book, and maybe they were told stories, and they were probably told stories, not the way that the book is written today. So that's what I was talking about as far as that goes.
Right.
So, yeah.
And so, you got hundreds and hundreds of years later, maybe 1,000 years later, people are, you got these stories. It's just like telephone. That as time goes on, people just throw in their own details and take out what they don't, what I mean? So,
and their own slant, in my opinion. I mean, that's where I say, that's where I say, I feel like it's the first book of politics, because there's a division. It's very divisive, and I hate to say that, but it is. If
religion is division.
Then the world is. Then you are doomed. Instead of, no, it's okay. Just please, just stay in your own lane, and you know what I mean. Like, it's just it's always been like that.
Yeah,
like religion
and politics are basically meant to divide people, and it does.
It
I
sure
mean,
does.
you, look
Sure
at all
does.
the people you could be friends with if they weren't a different, religion.
Or
Because
if
you're
there
told,
was
oh,
right.
yeah, look at how
Because
the
religions, a
republic.
lot of religions, you're right, Kathy, because a lot of
Hmm.
religions impose these rules
You
and
can't talk to them. No, you can't talk to them. Yep.
exactly. And not all religions do, let's get that right, but a lot of
Right.
religions impose
It's right.
instead of loving somebody, you can only love somebody that's your own
Right.
denomination.
Right.
But then
Right.
why did you fall in love? We can't help who we fall in love with.
Right.
And I think that that's God's will too. You know what I'm
And
saying? Like,
so, right.
when do we
If they're
start
right.
saying what's our will and what's God's will? That's why it's very, very personal. You know what I mean? But I
Hmm.
mean, and sometimes it's used as a weapon. You know what I mean?
It's all the time.
I
All
don't
the
think
time.
that it should be used as that. You know what I
No,
mean?
right.
So
Because if there was no different, if you weren't all these different religions, there'd be you look at all the different friends you'd have and the people you could meet, and the same with politics. If there weren't Democrats and Republicans, look at how many more friends and people you could talk to.
right, right,
Because they don't want to talk. Oh, you're a Democrat. Oh, you're a Republican. It's divide and conquer. It's the
right,
oldest
right,
oldest game in the book. Just divide them up. They can't get everybody out once. They divide them up into bite-sized pieces, and then you can conquer them.
right,
Republicans, Democrats, Catholics, Lutherans. You know what I mean?
right.
Yeah, it's just a division. Religion's division. Politics is division. I told you I've never once spent an ounce of my time or energy on politics in my life. Never.
Right.
I see it for what it is. But anyway, so the day and the hour unknown, but about that day or hour, no one knows, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. Was as it was in the days of Noah's, so will it be at the coming of the Son of Man. For in the days before the flood, people were eating and drinking. Now this is just like what happened. All right, they're at the Passover. They're having a great time. All the people are together. They're reunited. It's a big old party. Everybody's happy. All right, just a regular day, another Passover. Nobody's thinking nothing's going to happen. Just like when the flood came for Noah. For in the days before the flood, people were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage. Everything was normal up to the day that Noah entered in the ark, and they knew nothing about what would happen until the flood came and took them all away. That is how it will be in the coming of the Son of Man. 2 men will be in the field, one will be taken, other left. 2 will be grinding at the handmill, one will be taken, one will be left. Now, people will think this is now. There's a theory that came up. There was a woman some woman. I can't remember who her name is, but she came up with a theory in the less than 100 years ago. Maybe I can't remember, but very recently, a woman came up with a where she saw rapture in this. So people who couldn't face the fact that all these horrible things are coming. I'm talking present day, today,
Right.
modern day. Modern people will read this. I don't want to go through that. So this woman, I can't remember her name. You can look it up. But she invented a way out, a loophole. Okay, it's called the rapture, and so she makes up this thing where she took these certain Bible verses out of context and put them together and said, look, right before all the bad stuff happens, God just sucks you up like a vacuum cleaner into the air. Woo, there you go. You don't have to do nothing. Don't worry about it. Okay, and this is one of the verses that, because you're God's chosen, everybody else has suffered but you. Even though Jesus said this is going to happen, you're going to be turned over to authorities. They're going to put you to death and all this other stuff. So that doesn't match up with this, right? Now, if there's a rapture that takes you out, why is Jesus warning you? Hey, guys, it's going to be pretty rough. They're going to come get you and probably torture you, put you to death. But, just hang in there. He wouldn't have told everybody, braced everybody for all this. If there was going to be this way out, sucked into the air, unharmed. Anyway, that is a gross misunderstanding of this verse here. This is one of the verses that they use for the rapture. the harpazo, the catching away, the snatching away, they call it. Okay, let's just put this here. 2 men will be in the field, one will be taken and the other left. All through the Old Testament, all through the Bible, when you're taken, basically you're taken out. Okay, you're done. All right,
Okay.
it means you're killed, right? But she turned it into one will be taken, like there she goes up in the vacuum cleaner.
Okay.
But no, taken means one will die. All right. Now, if you go back, as a matter of fact, go back and go to the Old Testament and read, Noah's, I think it's Genesis chapter 6. I think of where God, like, he was sorry he even made humans, so he wiped everybody out. And so I think it's chapter 6, if I remember right. But in Genesis, you'll see that the people were taken, all these people were taken. That means they died, you know what I mean? So through the whole Old Testament, these people would have known darn well when you're taken, basically it means you're taken out, you know what I mean? And so it means you die. So one will die and the other one will be left. 2 women will be grinding at the mill. One will be taken out, basically die, and the other one will be left. And so that's really like I said, a very gross misunderstanding of the word taken. She turned taken from dying into being raptured.
Yeah,
Anyway.
so I want to read you something from what you were just talking about, Genesis chapter 6.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The Lord saw that the human beings on the earth were very wicked, and that everything that they thought about was evil. He was sorry he has made human beings on the earth, and his heart was filled with pain. So the Lord said, I will destroy all human beings that I made on the earth, and I will destroy every animal and everything that crawls on the earth, and the birds of the air, because I am sorry I have made them. But Noah pleased the Lord.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Well, because it was talking about, about the ark, building the ark.
Yeah, he said, man, this was a big mistake. I shouldn't have made these people. You know what I mean? They're so evil.
He said, I just read, if we're to believe the Bible, that's exactly from the Bible. I have my own Bible. I was reading it from the Bible.
Yeah, and so when you go through the Old Testament, anytime somebody's taken, that means they died. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so, that's what happened. He said, this sucks. These people suck. I'm going to get rid of them. So what did he do? He ended up he thought Noah was, the holiest one he could find.
Right. Obviously.
So Noah, right. So Noah builds this ark. It took 100 years, and he was 500 when it started, and he's 600 years old when it's done. So Noah builds this ark, and he takes his 3 sons, and they took 3 wives, and so there's 8 people on the ark. And as soon as the flood receded, and they got off the ark, the boat, the ship, or whatever. First thing he did is planted a vineyard, and he made wine and got drunk. That's your holiest guy, the guy that first thing he does is makes wine and gets. Oh yeah. Then he was drunk and he was naked on his bed, and his sons came in and saw him. And when he woke up, he cursed the sons. Well, man, I wouldn't get into that. Anyway, it's not a good story.
Wow.
Yeah, it's not good. But anyway, I thought, wow, that's the one you picked, huh? The one that couldn't wait to get drunk. and then there was some issues with getting drunk. Anyway, but yeah. So anyway, so actually that's the end of 24. I mean, it's not the end of Matthew 24, but that's the end of the prophecy part. So now there's other, the books of Paul and whatever. There's other, like I said, you can pull up end time Bible verses and look for yourself. But basically, it's all the same thing, just different, but alluding to the same mess you got here. So then you get in the book of Revelation, okay? And now the book of Revelation wasn't even, who knows when that was made. It was definitely after the temple was destroyed, because it was probably 90 to 90 to 100 AD. It was getting into the 2nd century already. So this is definitely not by any disciple. It's supposedly written by John, so everybody assumes, oh, that's his best friend, John. No, it wasn't. John would not have been alive, for one thing, in the 2nd century. So you get in the book of Revelation, and that's the apocalypse. It's the book of Revelation is the same word. It's the apocalypse means the same as Revelation. It's revealing, the big reveal. It's like having a blanket over something, and then you uncover it, and everybody's wow, you know. So it's the unveiling, you know what I mean, of the visions in the end time. So apocalypse means, you know, like a big reveal. They pull the sheet off and reveal what's. So that's basically, you know, what it's called. Okay, the book of Revelation is the big unveiling. Oh, now look at, we got another thing, guys. This just in. You know what I mean? So here's what's gonna.
You know what's really weird is that, so book of Revelations, that doesn't seem to match any of the other like stories in the Bible.
No. And by the way, what happened to Jesus end times? Right? Didn't happen. So now you're what, you know, 70, 100 years later, you're going to write a new ending. You know, and it's not even close to the authors of the other stuff. You know what I mean? So this seems to be
Revelations. I think is very scary. I remember when I first read it. You know, it's very scary. It's very symbolic, but it's nothing like any of the other stories in the Bible at all.
No, and as a matter of fact, the rest of the New Testament has Jesus as this loving, gentle guy that wouldn't hurt nothing. You know what I mean? But then you cut to Revelation, he's just this mass killer, and he just wants to slaughter everybody, and he wants to throw the women in bed and torment them, and he wants to kill children. And I mean, just like, who is this guy? You know? Anyway, so it's completely different. I wouldn't. Yeah. Anyway. So, but the book of Revelation is pretty simple. You break it down into 3 parts, right? The first part is they talk about John's vision, and you know it's not John because who did he say? I think 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John comes. Well, so the end of the Bible, you got 1st, 2nd, 3rd John, then you got Jude, which is supposed to be Jesus' brother, right? And then you got the book of Revelation. So leading up to the book of Revelation, you got a few little clues, but he says, I'm John, I'm your brother that went through tribulation with Gaius, or I can't remember if it was Gaius, can't remember who he said he went through tribulation with, but again, that doesn't match up anywhere near that time. So this is not we don't know who this John is. This is John Doe, basically.
John Doe.
Yeah, because what he's saying isn't matching anything. So anyway, book of Revelation is just really 3 parts. You can break it into. The first part is chapter 1 is John's vision, like what is it called? It's what he's going to see. All right, here. I used to have it memorized because I used to fall asleep every night to the book of Revelation, and so I had
Why the first asleep to the book of Revelation. That's scary.
Oh, I love it because at the beginning, it's like, behold, he come with clouds, and every eye shall see him, and even so, amen. Or even those that pierced him will see it. You know what I mean? Because all these prophecies said Jesus and all these people are promising is going to be in your lifetime. You know, this generation will not pass away until I come back. You know what I mean?
Right.
You know, you won't even get to the 4 corners of the earth spreading the gospel. I'm already going to be back. I'm coming back. It's going to be soon. It'll be in your lifetime. Well, here we are thousands of years later. Anyway, so now there's a whole new thing. So, you know, whoever this John is, chapter 1, he just tells you this. It's kind of cool in the first chapter. And then
it says, this is the revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave to him to show his servants what must soon happen. And Jesus sent his angel to show it to his servant John, who has told everything he has seen. It is the
Mhm.
word of God. It is the message from Jesus Christ. Happy is the one who reads the words of God's message, and happy are the people who hear the message and do what is written in it. The time is near when all of this will happen.
Right. And when did they write that? 2,000
Yeah.
years ago?
Yeah.
Right. Well, yeah, the original, I mean, the old version said, you're blessed if you read these words. But yeah, anyway, so then you get into chapter 2 and 3, and Jesus is writing. Well, I'm not even going to say Jesus. This guy says that these are 7 letters to the 7 churches, okay? The churches from Asia Minor. So in chapter 2 and 3, you have the 7 letters to the 7 churches. And out of those churches, he's very disappointed with 5 of them. They said you weren't loyal. You didn't persevere to the end. And, he's disappointed.
Right.
You like money too much, or what? I mean, so but 2 of the churches he was okay with: the Church of Philadelphia and the Church of Smyrna. Those are the 2 that he said were doing good, but the rest he didn't like. He was very disappointed. Anyway, then you get into the stuff that's a little more apocalyptic, the things which will take place are from chapter 4 to the end of the book. Well, no, I can't even say that. I'll say from 4 to 22. They'll tell you about all the things that are going to take place. Okay, and during that, you have a third of the people die from what? Pestilences, diseases, starvation, right? All the things that happen at whenever you have war. People die. They have no food. They get disease and pestilence and all this other stuff.
Famine and
Mhm. Yeah. So it tells you that all the things that are going to take place is horrible things. This scares people. Oh, there's going to be a third of the earth will die, and then a lot of it doesn't make. There's a lot of contradictions. Like I can't remember if it's 8 or 9, somewhere around there. He says something like, he's telling the angels to go do this and go do that and wreck this and burn that, and he tells the angels or whoever. He says, okay, now burn up a third of the earth, or burn up the earth, or whatever. He said, go burn everything. Even the green grass and the trees. Burn it up.
A third of the water became all bitter.
Yeah, that too. Yep. So yeah, there you go. A third.
Then
right?
the 4th angel blew his trumpet, and a third of the sun, and a third of the moon, and a third of the stars were struck. So a third of them became dark, and a third of the day was without light, and also the night.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because what it gets into is the 7 seals, 7 trumpets, and 7 bowls of wrath. That God's pouring out this wrath, right? There's 7 seals that are opened up, 7 trumpets that are blown, and 7 bowls of wrath are poured out on the people. God's wrath. Anyway, and during that stuff, it's like I said. So he says, "Go burn up all the grass, burn up everybody and everything, and even including the grass and the trees." And then, like the next chapter, it says, okay, send somebody else, send locusts, send locusts in there and wipe out everything, except don't eat none of the grass. Don't have the locusts hurt the grass. So wait a minute, we just burnt up the grass. You know what I mean? So, because I put this out on a 6-8 foot timeline. Okay, I taped a bunch of pieces together, and I had a timeline with the dates and everything in order, and I'm okay. There's something wrong here. Anyway, so 1 minute they burned everything up, including the green grass. Next, he sends out locusts, but don't eat the grass. Like, okay, but we already burnt that up. Anyway, but all these horrible things happen. He pretty much wipes out everybody. And then what happens is, once they're down to pretty much nobody, then Jesus returns. And now the martyrs, all the people who lost their lives in the name of Jesus or whatever, those people get to come back and live with him during the little season. So there's or during so anyway, once everything's wiped out, Jesus comes down with all the people who were martyred, right? Comes down with the martyrs. He sets up something on earth here, and then him and the martyrs kind of rule, and that's when he finally gets to sit on the throne of David. Okay, we've been waiting. Finally, he gets. We've been waiting thousands of years for this, but now he gets to sit on the throne of David, and he rules, and with his martyrs and all that. And then after a certain time, I can't remember how long. It's 1,000 years. I can't remember. But after a certain time,
1,000 years, I saw an angel coming down from heaven.
There you go.
He had the key to the bottomless pit.
Yep.
Stone in his hand. The angel grabbed the dragon, that old snake who is the devil and Satan, and tied him up for 1,000 years. Then he threw them into the bottomless pit, closed it, and locked it over him. The angel did this so he could not trick the people of the earth anymore until 1,000 years were ended. And 1,000 years he must be set free for a short time.
Yeah, that's Satan's little season. So okay, so after everything, everybody's dies and everything, Jesus comes back. He sets up shop. He's ruling in Jerusalem on the throne, and he's got his martyrs, and they're the bosses with him, and then during that time, during that 1,000 years when Jesus is here, they call in the older versions they call that old Satan, that old serpent. You know what I mean? So they say they take Satan, the old serpent, and they put him down in this thing, and they chain him up, and they shut it and chain him up.
The bottomless pit.
Yeah. So he's in the bottomless pit. So for 1,000 years, Jesus and his martyrs kind of run the world. You know what I mean? And he sits on his throne and all that. And then after the 1,000 years, for some reason, he opens up and he lets Satan back out. And Satan goes and, raises hell all over the place. And then after that, he takes Satan and he just completely annihilates him. Right? Then comes judgment time. So then all of the people are raised up from the dead. It's judgment time.
People of the world were judged. Then I saw a great white throne, and the one who was sitting on it. Earth and sky ran away from him and disappeared. And I saw the dead, great and small, standing before the throne. And books were open, and the book of life was open. The dead were judged by what they had done, which was written in the books. The sea gave up the dead who were in it, and the death and Hades gave up the dead who were in them. Each person was judged by what he had done. And death and Hades were thrown into the lake of fire. The lake of fire is the second death, and anyone whose name was not found written in the book of life was thrown into the lake of fire.
He divides them, sheeps to the left, goats to the right, or whatever, or vice versa. Sheeps go one way, goats to the other. And and if you don't make it, you're thrown into the lake. By everybody just annihilated, you're gone. And so the ones who make it, then you're in, right? And then what happens is then God just destroys the earth, okay? Then he completely destroys the entire earth. It's rolled up like a scroll, basically thrown away. And then at the very end, like the very last paragraph or two in Revelation, the New Jerusalem comes down, okay? This is the new dwelling place, okay? So then this big giant cube comes down from the sky. And there's this kind of heaven, you might say. It's either heaven, whatever. It's the new place, the new world, the new heaven, whatever. And this comes down and it's lowered down. And then it's called the New Jerusalem, okay? Now, if the word Jerusalem literally means New Salem, okay? Like Salem, Massachusetts. It's the New Salem, okay? That's Jerusalem. So this is the new Salem, right? The New Jerusalem. So the New Jerusalem comes down because the other earth has passed away. It's gone. They crumpled it up. It's in a scroll. They threw it away. rolled it up like a scroll. So this new cube comes down out of the heavens, and this is going to be everybody's new place, right? And so and it's like 1,400. It's 1,360 miles. 1,360 miles. So you might as well say 1,400 miles each direction. It's a cube, like Saturn's cube. So you go 1,450, or no, 1,400, 1,400, 14. So it's a complete square. So it's 1,400 in each direction. It's 1,400 miles high, 1,400 miles each way, and then 14 miles high. And you got 12. Everything's 12. So you got 12 layers, right? There's 12 floors, and each one of those floors is made of precious stones, like rubies and whatever, all these precious stones, beautiful colors. One floor is even agate, Agate, whatever, agate. So there's different stones, different floors, and each one of the floors there's 12 floors, and then there's also 12 doors on each. So 12 doors. So there's 3 doors on each side of the cube. There's 3, 6, 9, 12. So there's 12 floors, 12 doors, and each door is a gigantic pearl. Okay, when they say the pearly gates, people think it's like a gate with pearls all over it. No, a gate is the door. So it's one gigantic pearl. That's the door. So there's 3 giant pearls on the bottom of each one. That's a door, and so each one of those, and they're named after the 12 tribes and the 12 disciples. Okay, so you got so the doors, the big giant pearls, there's 12 of those. Each one is for tribe of Israel. So you got the tribe of Judah, Benjamin, because they're all going to be together. So you got all 12 tribes. Each door is for a different tribe. And then each floor of the new heaven is named after one of the apostles, right? 12 apostles. And then so when you get in there, it's called the Holy City, the final dwelling. Everything is gold and jasper and all these precious jewels and everything. And they call it the River of Life. There's a crystal clear, river coming through right up the center. And there's trees, and there's fruit trees that you can eat. Now, there isn't going to be any meat because there's no death. Okay, so there ain't going to be meat, but there's going to be fruit. Okay, so vegetarians will like this. So each one of them trees has 12 different fruits on each tree, and then every month there's 12 more. You know what I mean? And so I guess that's what you're eating. And I can't remember what else. I just remember the trees, the 12, of course there's 12, right? Everything's
okay,
12.
so hang on. Then the angel showed me the river of the water of life. It was shining like crystal and was flowing from the throne of God and of the Lamb down the middle of the street of the city. The tree of life was on each side of the river. It produces fruit 12 times a year, once each month. The leaves of the tree are from the healing of the nations. Nothing that God judges guilty will be in that city. The throne of God and of the Lamb will be there, and God's servants will worship him. So, there you go. So I was talking about the tree. The trees and the tree of life, and that's basically going back to Adam and Eve in the garden, and there's the tree of life. Yeah, remember you had the tree of life, and you had the river Pison, the river Jordan. I can't remember the rivers, but there's the same thing, rivers and the trees. You know what I mean? And here's the thing. Now the people that wrote this. Wrote it at a time where they're starving. They're they ain't got shit. I mean, they're they don't. There's not a good place to live. There's they wrote it in a horrible time of distress. And so, what do you think a man, like if we could all do it. In your worst day, you could write, okay, what would heaven be like? Okay, if you like steaks and
cupcakes or whatever, you say, oh well, it'd be filled with steaks and it'd be filled with cupcakes, and
Right, right.
so it's gonna be like, oh man, we're gonna have all the food we want. We're gonna have all the fresh water, because remember this, they lived in the desert. Water was huge. To have water, it was life or death, right?
Right,
And that's
right.
it's a big part of it, because they lived in the desert. It was always a problem about the water. So look, you got all the water and it's clean. You can drink it. And look, you got food constantly coming in. I mean, so it's like their version of what, and everything's going to be covered with gold. You know what I mean? And there's going to be pearls and rubies and diamonds, all the things that a person that has no money and, we're going to walk on streets of gold. Oh, okay. But I doubt the real God cares at all if you're going to walk on gold. The real God doesn't, in my opinion, isn't materialistic. You know what I mean? But these are very materialistic visions. You know what I mean? Oh man, we're gonna have money. We're gonna have money. We're gonna have food. We're gonna have water. We can do whatever we want. Nobody's gonna, rule over us. So they're just describing like what their vision of the heaven would be.
Exactly. I agree.
And the
different to everybody.
Yeah, and so now in the Old Testament, funny enough, they never discuss an afterlife. Never. You're basically you go to Sheol. You go to in the ground, and at the most they describe it as a dark, cold place that they don't want to be. So Sheol is just and they never speculated on what happens after you die. I mean, now I've watched rabbis for years, and now I saw two different rabbis kind of come out of the closet about reincarnation. That they've kind of, some of them believe in reincarnation, which makes a whole lot more sense. But you'll never see them telling you about what happens after you die. So when you get to the New Testament, they're telling you, everything is going to happen after you die. Like, says who? Right? But the Jewish people never said anything about what happens after you die. The Jewish people, this is their I don't want to speak for everybody, but what I've seen and heard out of their own mouth, the rabbis, is we live a good life that pleases God, and then after you die, if there is something afterwards, we'll be in good shape. But you're supposed to just live a good, godly life. And then if there is an afterlife, you don't have to worry about it. You know what I mean? If there's not,
right.
You know
because
what I mean?
then you've lived right. Because exactly,
Right.
That makes sense. Though as simple as it sounds, that makes sense.
Right, because you're living your life now. You need the blessings now. You need God's help now.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I agree.
They're worried about now their life that they're living, which you should. It's better than having this hell and torment held over your head. Like, oh my gosh, what if I did something wrong? I mean, all that stress and worry about the afterlife and stuff, and when nobody can prove it, you know what I mean? I know that there's an afterlife because I won't even get into all the studies that I've done about that, but who's going to prove for sure? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, people, there's a lot of people, as you know, that have come back and said that the same thing that they saw, you know what I mean? So there's a lot of people that have been on the verge of death and have even died and were able to be brought back over, Yeah,
those are the near-death experiences, and they all do the same thing, and not one of them. You'll see somewhere. I saw flames of hell, and God told me to quit doing whatever you're doing. I don't believe that. I don't believe. I know. Basically, I know. I believe. I know exactly what happens after you die and the afterlife and all that other stuff, and why we're here, the meaning of life, and all that stuff. That's just a whole nother. Because you can talk to the people on the other side. That's why.
Yeah,
and you can,
Yeah, you told me that.
Yeah, I've communicated with people, and you can. We're taught not to, and we're taught because listen, if the churches would mostly go out of business if people weren't scared about the afterlife. That's half the reason people are there to try to make sure they don't burn
Right.
in hell.
Right.
Okay,
That's right.
okay. That's a religion of fear. Okay, so they're go to church because of they're scared, and so it's just sad. In fact, the Catholic people will have they have something called purgatory, where hey, your loved one died and he really wasn't walking a good godly life. So if you just pay us money, what we'll do is we'll pray for him, and then we'll get him out of enough prayers will get him out of purgatory, so he doesn't have to burn in hell. With
Yeah,
this very
I know about
large
purgatory.
donation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's always about the money. I mean, if you and a lot of Christians, like if you the people out there evangelizing and people out there trying to get people into Christianity, it's always for threats. It's like, okay, if you don't, you're going to burn in hell, and if you don't, God will hate you, and if you don't believe in Jesus, this will happen, all these bad things will happen. Okay, like, where's the selling point? Okay, it's all fear based. If you don't believe in him,
Exactly. That's what it is.
it's fear based.
So
You know what I mean?
Where's the good, loving God in that?
Right. If you don't, God's going to burn you. Like, okay, what kind of a parent would punish your kid by burning him forever? It's just disgusting. I mean, because what? They believe the wrong thing? Like, okay, if you wanted all to believe the same, then you would have wrote a book that's infallible and everybody would be on the same page, no pun intended. But everybody would be, everybody would have the same book, and there would be no variations, and there'd be no contradictions and all that stuff. But in order for the church to have you keep coming back and giving them money, you have to have that fear that, oh, God's going to do this to me, God's going to do that, and what if I burn in hell? So the fear is what brings people back to the church, crawling in the church door saying, tell me how to not get, So if people knew that after you die, your spirit leaves and you go back into the heavens, and I wouldn't even get into all that. But if you knew the beauty of after you die, I mean, right? Even while people are dying, my mother-in-law, when she died, we were watching her, and she's reaching out to her friend that she grew up with. Oh, it's beautiful! It's beautiful. Everybody says that when they're dying. The veil thins. Okay, the veil is almost gone, and they can see on the other side, and they see the beauty, and they see their family, and they see the people they love, and their dogs, and and they see all these people waiting for them, and it's beautiful every time. And so, if you knew that, you really wouldn't need the church, because I'll tell you, the church doesn't teach you any really. They might read a Bible verse or two, but they're not going to read. You're never going to learn that way. Like I said, I studied from every waking hour for 8 years, round the clock. Even the guys that worked for me, because we'd get to a job and I'd set up, a lecture, like a lesson or whatever. I would set up and we would run the Bible. Instead of blasting music, I'd be having the Bible verses blasting, and even they learned a lot. You know what I mean? just being at work, they were kind of they thought it was fascinating too. But yeah, so even they learned a lot just by that. But yeah, there's no shortcuts to learning all this. Literally thousands and thousands. I got 2,500 live streams in a row, and 2,500 nights in a row, and they're all 2-3 hour sessions of studying, and it's mostly what I learned during that day. I would always find things a lot of things nobody else saw, and so anyway, I always came up with stuff nobody else knew, and so yeah, it was fun, and I still study. I love biblical scholars. I fell asleep listening to a couple biblical scholars last night.
Cool. Cool.
Yeah, I love listening to mostly Bible scholars,
So do you think
Basically
that
theology. Mhm.
do you think there will be an end of times, and what do you think that looks like? What do you think it looks like?
Actually, no, I don't think there's going to be a time where the earth ends anymore. What I think what happens though sometimes, I think there's a certain point, because remember, it's all up to God what happens. It's not up to people pushing a button, or it's not up to humans. It's up to God what happens. So what I believe is over thousands and thousands and thousands, long before the Adam and Eve story and all that stuff, because those stories were taken from the Mesopotamian texts. You know what I mean? For the most part, they were actually stories handed down to them, the Adam and Eve creation and the Noah's Ark and all that. Though the people that wrote that Old Testament got those stories from somebody else, and I think it's kind of, that's a deep subject, but what I believe is that occasionally, over time, I think mankind gets off track, and I think every once in a while, certain areas in the world are just wiped out. And if you have you ever studied Tartaria, the mud floods? What are they called? Meltology.
I've not studied it, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, Tartaria, meltology and stuff. You even in the United States, when they dig down, sometimes you will see ancient cities buried, and they've unearthed ancient, even in the United States. I mean, there's people here thousands of years ago, long before the natives and the Columbus story and all that. Thousands of years, and they will dig up entire cities that have been just melted and buried, and you'll look at a mountainside and you'll say, "Wow,
so don't you consider that at some point like the end of somebody else's times?"
Yeah, and whatever it is, yeah, it would be the end of them. But the Earth was still here, and it grew back, and all that other shit, But so I don't know how big areas this happened, but whatever it is, it happens fast, and it's usually something of scorching heat where it just melts everything, and it happens so fast that people are like sitting in a chair, they're laying in bed, nobody sees it coming. They've even dug up these cows that still had stuff in their mouth that they were chewing. It happened so fast in a snap like that, where everybody's basically annihilated, and all in this, without, nobody's running, it just happens in a snap. Nobody sees it coming, and it's black, But look into that, Tartaria, the mud floods and all that, meltology. And that's fascinating subject too. But I think every once in a while, if things got horribly out of hand here, and there's, who knows what happens? Technology, who knows? But there's I think there's a certain point where God says, let's wipe this slate clean,
So that would be the end times for us. I mean, when God says we're going to wipe the slate clean, that's the end times as we know it, all to start all over again, right?
Yeah, but in the Bible, it's just a one end time, and then the earth is just scrolled up like a scroll and tossed away, and then you go to the New Jerusalem. So no, it's a one time event in the New Testament. It's not something that happens over and over and over. They're describing one event, and then once it.
But I'm saying. In what you're saying about digging into the earth, and finding other cities that were there before. So I'm saying, isn't that like a pattern? I mean, couldn't it be at one point, during civilization, at some point, this the Bible and everything and all of that just came to another point where there was end time before, and you know what I'm saying? And we just haven't reached this end time yet.
I would think of it more like a reset. I mean, because it doesn't end. We're still here. I mean, there's still humans. There's still trees and
Well,
grass.
we don't know what the next species is going to look like. Actually, if we're to believe that, if we're to believe like each species, and I'm not saying that this is biblical because it's not, but for sake of argument, you're talking about civilizations, and each civilization that they show us, everybody, I mean, there's a difference in the looks, clearly, right? So even in the skulls, we see.
I mean, think of this. You know about the Dark Ages?
Yes.
Okay, well, there's a certain time, I don't know if it's 500 years or something, where it's just gone, right? You
Right.
have, so you got the first 100 years, second 100 years. So, okay, there's a certain point, I can't remember if it's 1500 AD, 1000 to 15. If there's a certain section of time that's gone, we have everything before that, we have everything after that, but this 500 years or whatever it is missing. Nothing. Okay, I think that's when one of these happened. I mean, yeah.
Mm-mm-mm.
You know what I mean? Where everything is, but I don't think it's worldwide. I think it's section by section. You know what I mean? Otherwise, we wouldn't have artifacts from thousands of years ago. You know what I mean? Some things do survive in certain areas, and it's just like you could flood out half of a country, but the whole rest of the world would be there. You know what I mean? You could burn up a whole bunch of cities, but the rest of the world would still be there. So I don't know. I think it's regional, maybe. I don't know. But the Dark Ages is very interesting because why, how, where did it go? How come there's not one single record, not a coin? In fact, you could look at coins. Okay, there's coins from back in Jesus' day. He asked. Anyway, they have coins back then, so there's coins leading all up to that, and then for 500 years, nothing, and then there's coins again. I mean, no matter what you research, it all stops for hundreds of years, and then it starts back up. Artifacts and stuff.
So here it is. It's from 500 to 1000 AD.
Yeah,
Typically
there you go.
To the early mid ages in Western Europe, roughly 500 to 1000 AD.
Yep. Yeah, it's like 500 years missing. And
characterized by reduced literary output, urban decline, and increased migration conflict. This period saw a shift from centralized Roman rule to decentralized feudal societies. While formerly seen as a total darkness, it was a time of transformation. Started 476, like you said, the fall of Rome, around 1000 AD.
Yep. Yeah, there's missing pieces in history, and I think that's when things get wiped out, and maybe you don't even have a pencil and paper for a while. You know what I mean? Yeah, some things get saved. You know what I mean? Because we got a lot of history from before that. We've got ancient carvings. We've got hieroglyphics.
Yeah, but okay. So here's a perfect example of that, because you and I have talked about an apocalypse, right? And and I said to you, I really don't want to be around in that. So perhaps that happened, right? And this is the remains of that.
Well, I mean, the apocalypse could basically, I mean, it's always the same. It's war, it's death, it's famine, it's disease.
But what I'm saying is perhaps there was some sort of mass destruction that happened in 476. And that's what wiped out, 500 years before the earth became safe enough to repopulate.
Right.
We don't know that, right? We don't know that.
We don't know because it's just gone.
Right.
But like I said, before that, the coins and the carvings and the ancient stuff before that still around. So
right.
It couldn't have been in every inch of the earth. I think it's certain regions or something. But yeah, that's the Dark Ages. There's just no history. It's just gone. I think I think of it more as a great reset. Where like, okay, this is kind of like the flood. God just says, okay, enough is enough. This is BS. Wipe it out and start over. You know.
Yeah.
Now, when God, according to the Bible, when God flooded the earth, remember He said, "Okay, I'm never going to do. I'm never going to flood you guys out again." But He didn't
Right.
say He wasn't going to burn you out.
Exactly.
He said, I'm not going to drown everybody again." But He didn't say He would burn everybody and melt everybody. You know, so He just thought, drowning was kind of cruel. Got babies,
Well,
you
he
got
did that
kittens and
before,
puppies.
right? We're to believe he did that before, right?
Yeah, but he kind of, felt a little bit bad because it was kind of everybody's drowning and shit. It was kind of a long, prolonged. It's better just get it over with in a second. When the cows are still got chewing in their food in their mouth and they're sitting there, everybody's just in the same spot that they were when it happened. You know what I mean?
Right.
Never see it coming. Never saw it coming. So, I mean, yeah, drowning people because it was 40 days and 40 nights of rain. For 40, and people were climbing up mountains, trying to get higher and higher and higher, climbing up trees and shit. It was pretty brutal. I mean, you got kids, you got babies, you got puppies, kittens, cattle. I mean, it's cruel. You know what I mean? So yeah, So if any of that's true, and He promised, I'm not gonna flood you guys out anymore. But He didn't say He wasn't gonna fry everybody. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, do you think we're by the end times, or what do you think?
Well, like I said, I don't think there is a end of the world at all. I think the Earth goes through different cycles. We might. I mean, if we're toward the end of a cycle, I don't think so. I don't think so because actually things are. People not understand this, but things are way better. I know people look around. Oh, the world's gone to hell. No, actually, we're way better off than we were 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, or even 500 years ago, because, back up till now, people died constantly without modern medicine. People would barely live to 40 and 50 because
right.
How many people right now would be alive without modern medicine? I would have died from an infected tooth back in my 30s. I had a tooth, my front tooth got infected, and it swelled up my. If without modern medicine, I would have died. That tooth infection.
Wow. Yeah.
I mean, if you never had antibiotics or never got healed, never went to a doctor, probably, a lot of us would be dead. Whether it's antibiotics, sepsis, infection, whatever. So, and now it's not barbaric. People aren't just killing each other and chopping people. I mean, it's not the way it used to be. It used to be very barbaric and yeah, there's wars. Yeah, well, there's always been wars. Okay, back in the Old Testament, yeah, there was wars. Probably worse than now, you know what I mean? Just different weapons, that's all. But there's always gonna be wars. But as far as like famine, there's not really a lot of people starving anymore in the earth. There's not a lot of people. It's not brutal like it was, and I mean, so we got laws now. We got forensics that don't let you get away with killing people like people used to get away with. You know what I mean? The laws are. We have laws. We have a more civilized, civilization, you might call it. But things are. So you might not. You might, if you think things are worse than ever, no, go back and see how things used to. Look at back in the 1800s, the Cowboys days. You know what I mean? It was brutal, and people, there's crimes that people did all the time, got away with it. People don't get away with crimes anymore that much. Yeah, there might be a lot of crimes, but the only reason it seems like a lot is because you've got a television or internet that shows you all over the world. So they can run these stories on that. There's probably always been that many stories. You just, without the technology, you wouldn't know. I don't have a TV or a radio, so I mean, I don't, I don't even pay attention to what's happening because there's always going to be a war. There's always going to be this stuff. You know what I mean? But yeah, I think we're more civilized than ever at this point. So no, I don't think anything's going to be soon. Mm-mm.
All right.
And so anyway, that's about it.
Well, you
Yeah.
were gonna say, and if what? And if what?
I don't know. I forgot.
That's all right. That's all right. That's all right. Well, I thank you for taking the time and going
Mhm.
over this. I found this to be fascinating, and I think a lot of people will like this. I think a lot of people will find this interesting.
Yeah. Yep. I just would listen. You can go on YouTube and you can see these Christians that are thinking it's going to be anytime, 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 and then when COVID happened, oh, this is it,
Right, right. I remember. I
it's,
remember.
oh yeah, it's the end of the world, and then
And the blood
something else.
moon, and the blood moon, and
Oh,
then
the blood, yeah,
2000. Remember the
yeah,
millennial? The millennial?
yeah, the Y2K and all. Yeah, it's always going to be the end of the world, and unfortunately, if you go on these channels and look in the comment section, I should do a video about it sometime. You'll see that every single when the people that are waiting for the rapture and waiting for the end times, they're always like, "Oh, I want out of this world. I can't stand it here. This is miserable. I wish Jesus would come." And they're just miserable, sitting there waiting, basically wishing to die. Basically, it's like depression. It's like watching psychiatric patients. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And everything that there it is, a blood moon. Are you kidding? Do you know how many blood moons we have each year, and how many full moons and how many eclipses? Look, what we just had a eclipse slash blood moon slash whatever it was. The full moon, eclipse, blood moon. It happens. It's always happening. But they'll see a blood moon. Oh my goodness, it's a blood moon. Because why? Because one Bible verse says the moon will turn to blood or something. You know what I mean?
Red like
So
blood. Yeah. Red.
yeah. So yeah, that happens. A couple times a year or whatever. So people, but if they're not educated, they'll take everything as, oh, another sign. There's a sign. There's a sign. Oh, I just saw 3 sevens. That's a sign from God. Anyway, I feel bad because people are wasting their life. It could be having a fun, happy life and enjoying life.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And not wishing to die. I mean, come on. I mean, God doesn't want that for you. Jesus don't want that for you.
I agree.
Don't sit around hoping to die because you can't stand it here. And you think everything's so evil, and they're seeing things that are evil that aren't evil. You know what I mean?
Right.
Calling good bad and bad good. You know what I mean?
I agree.
And so, anyway. But yeah, anyway.
Well, thank you so much, Kathy, and I appreciate you.
All right. Well, thank you. I appreciate being on here.
All right.
I always like talking about anything that has to do with Bible, any theology. And I mean, I've studied other religions. I've studied other beliefs in other religions and everything. So I think all the religions are kind of cool and interesting. But anyway, well, thanks for having me.
Not a problem. All right, guys. Thank you so much for listening to us on The Argument. This is Toddy One Skip and Kathy from Curious Soul Deep Dive.
Thank you.